Heather, just let me know when you've got everybody who was waiting.
Yeah, everybody's in. I mean, we could start going. It's 10:01.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this morning. My name is Sue Goganian. I am the director at Historic Beverly in Beverly, Massachusetts, and the current president of the NEMA board. We're really delighted to have you here. We're going to do a round of quick introductions of the board and the staff, so you all know who everybody is. But first, I'm going to go to Scarlett for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Sue, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Virtual spaces cannot replace the lands that sustain and empower us. I'm at home here in Worcester, Massachusetts, homelands of the Nipmuc Nation people and their allied tribes, past and present. The Nipmuc Nation Tribal Council is located at 25 Main Street in South Grafton. NEMA recognizes that our organization and those of our members were founded within a colonizing society, which continues the exclusions and erasures of many Indigenous peoples throughout New England and beyond. You can use the Indigenous Peoples land map. I'm going to drop a link in the chat to find the lands where you're either zooming in from today or where your museum is located. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'll hand it over to Dan for his introduction.
Do you want to do staff first, or do you want to do board?
Well, go ahead, Dan, since and then we'll go to the board.
Fine. Thank you, Scarlett, for doing that. I'm Dan Yeager. I'm the executive director of NEMA, and I'd like to offer my welcome to everybody here. This is an exciting time to get a chance to learn a little bit about our organization and our governance structure in particular. So thank you for your interest in being here. I've been at NEMA for about 12 years. We have a terrific team that does an awful lot of things, and I'm going to hand it over to Heather quickly to say hi, and then you can pass it off to the other staff and then on to the board.
Okay. I'm Heather Riggs. I'm Director of Administration here at NEMA. Just want to welcome everybody, and we've always enjoyed working with the board, and we appreciate everything that you all do for the museum field in general. I will pass it on to Meg then.
Morning, everybody. I'm Meg Winikates, Director of Engagement for NEMA, which means I work closely with the PAG chairs and also with the Advocacy Committee for the board. So happy to answer any questions you might have from that side of things, and I will pass it back to Scarlett.
Thanks, Meg. Scarlett Hoey, Director of Membership and Development, she, her pronouns. I work closely with the board for the Ad Hoc Membership Committee, and I will turn it back to Sue.
Thank you to the staff. And I'm going just in the order of my screen so I don't get messed up. So in that order, we will start with Amanda.
Thanks, Sue. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Goodheart Parks, Director of Education at the New England Air Museum in Connecticut, and I am a first-year NEMA board member. Very happy to be with you all today.
Thanks. Brindha?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Brindha Muniappan. I'm the Senior Director of the Museum Experience at Discovery Museum in Acton, Massachusetts. I've been on the board, I think, since about 2018. I lead the Nominating Committee, and I'm also on the Governance Committee.
Matt?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Kirkman, calling in from Salem, Massachusetts. I'm an independent museum professional. I do interpretive master planning and exhibition development under the guise of Object Idea. I've been a board member since 2016. I came to the board by way of being a PAG co-chair and exhibits PAG co-chair. So that's one of the routes that people come to the board. Let's see, I have been on the membership committee and I'm on the advocacy committee as well.
Thanks. Doneeca?
Good morning, everyone. Doneeca Thurston, she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of the Lynn Museum / Lynn Arts in downtown Lynn, Massachusetts. This is my first year on the NEMA board, and I am on the nominating committee with Brindha. Welcome.
Thanks. Lorén?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lorén Spears. I'm the executive director of Tamaqua Museum, Rhode Island's only Indigenous-led museum that speaks to our own community while educating the public. I've been on the NEMA board since 2018, and I currently serve on the advocacy committee.
Thanks. Pat?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm a life trustee of the USS Constitution Museum, an architect by profession, I've been on the board of NEMA for, I think, 8 years. I'm currently treasurer, which is with the Audit and Finance Committee, and I'm also on the Executive Committee and Governance. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. I think I've gotten all the board members. Yes, Dan's question is, if you are a participant, would you just drop a little introduction in the chat so we know your museum affiliation and where you live, and or whatever else you'd like to tell us. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brindha, since she's the chair of the nominating committee, to lead us through the rest of the session. Brindha.
Thanks, Sue. Again, welcome everyone, and thanks for taking time this morning to learn about what the NEMA board is and what it means to serve on the NEMA board. I'll get into sort of the logistics, or the kind of the point-by-point deliverables a little bit later, and we'll have time for a good amount of time for questions and answers as well. But before we do that, we wanted to have a select number of key members of our board speak about their experience on the board, as well as how they got into the NEMA board. And so I'd like to return back to Lorén, Doneeca, and Amanda, beginning with Lorén, who can talk about her experience with the NEMA board.
Hello, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be on the NEMA board. I got connected probably through Dan and through conference. We started having a lot of conversation on how we could outreach to Indigenous communities, and we started talking about land acknowledgements. And I feel like we've made lots of changes over the last several years in the regards to recognition of Indigenous peoples and telling their stories within museums in New England in general, and how to do that in the best possible way. It's been a pleasure to go to different museum locations across New England. When it's a non-COVID time, we actually have pretty much full day meetings at a different location. And so we've had some great opportunity to go to our colleagues' sites around New England and learn about what they're doing, which is really a lot of fun to do, and inspiring to see the kinds of exhibitions that they have and the work that they're doing. And so there's a great opportunity for collegial sharing within the NEMA board, as well as NEMA as a whole, which I think is really important and meaningful, and helps us all grow and get outside of our own bubble of view of what we're doing and what we're seeing at any particular time. I think I've been on the board when we've been doing a lot of growth at NEMA and really thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been really powerful. We've been going through some amazing trainings that has really opened all our eyes to different ways of thinking around even board structure, and what that might look like as we continue to grow as an organization and impact the New England Museum community. So I'll pause there.
Doneeca, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning again to everyone. So as I mentioned, I'm in my first year, so very, very green. I should also mention that when I first started this role, the opportunity came up, but it just wasn't the right time for me. So for folks interested in the call, and who may be in similar situations, you may say no once, but that doesn't mean no forever. So I'm excited to, be able to take on this role in my current capacity as executive director. It's been a lot of learning right now, and especially virtual. I haven't been able to meet everyone in person yet, but I look forward to our first in-person board meeting. But just catching up on a lot of the DEI work that the board has been working on. It's really refreshing to know that at a leadership level, NEMA is really thinking about DEI work and how that can really enter all of the different arms and legs that NEMA has here in the community. And then being on the nominating committee, I'm really excited to learn, just like Lorén said, I feel like we're all kind of operating in our own little microcosm. So it's nice to learn about the work that's going on across New England. And I'm really excited to do that and just learn more. But it's just been a fabulous experience so far. Again, only a few months in, but very rewarding, and looking forward to doing more with this board.
Thank you, Doneeca. And now I'd like to turn the floor over to Amanda, who is also a new board member, but has a significant history with NEMA.
Thanks, Brenda, and thanks, Lorén and Doneeca. Can I just say everything they said? Because my experience has been very much the same in the rewarding aspects of being on the board. But as Brenda mentioned, I am a first-year board member, and I serve on the Membership and Finance Committee. And I think my whole board experience so far can be wrapped up in the fact that I was an attendee in this session last year. I had been someone who had been involved with NEMA since 2007, which was my first conference when I was a senior in college. And over the years, I had participated in countless workshops and programs and seminars and conferences, and I had led sessions and participated as a speaker in conference sessions. So I considered myself a self-designated NEMA cheerleader for a long time. And I was so incredibly grateful to this organization for all the opportunities it had given me. And so around this 2019, I started thinking about ways I could start giving back to that organization. And so I was fortunate enough to become an education professional affinity gathering co-chair with my colleague, Erin Wiederbrook-Euskaitis, who is still in that role. And man, the fall of 19 was an interesting time to become a PAG chair because of course 2020 came around. So it was a fascinating and very gratifying experience trying to support museum educators throughout the pandemic. And then around this time last year, I started really thinking about how I wanted to pay it forward even more and to be able to truly give back at a very deep and meaningful level to this organization and to this greater field that had done so much for me. And so I wandered into this session a year ago thinking maybe I could potentially become a board member if they would, if they were interested in having me. And here we are a year later. So it's been a really rewarding and gratifying experience. And I'm extremely grateful to the NEMA staff, my fellow board members, as well as everyone in this field for the opportunity, and can't wait to answer questions you may have. Turn it back to Brenda.
All right, thank you all so much for sharing your stories. So at this point, I thought I might just run through some of the requirements, responsibilities for being a NEMA board member. And then, you know, if you've got any questions, we can just get right into trying to answer them. So let me just share my screen. Up there. Right. Is it in slideshow mode for you guys? Hopefully. All right. NEMA board members are asked to serve terms of 3 years, and you have the opportunity to renew twice so that you can spend up to 9 years on the NEMA board. So a good amount of time to really get to know, your fellow members and to think about, goals for NEMA and really how to support staff and advance the strategic agenda. We have 4 standing committees: the Executive Committee, Governance and Ethics, the Nominating Committee, and Audit and Finance. Every board member is asked to serve on at least 1 committee and sometimes 2. There are opportunities for everyone based on your own skill set and maybe skills that you're looking to grow. We have ad hoc committees as well, including advocacy, membership, and development. They're all very active committees. All committees work tightly with NEMA staff. So there's a lot of conversation and sort of building on the work that's been done prior. Commitments from board members: we ask everyone to attend 5 board meetings per year. And you can, the last one is held, one is held during the annual conference, which of course everyone on the board attends. You might spend about 5 hours a month on committee work and board meetings and other sessions that we might have together. We, not so much in the pandemic, but occasionally have board retreats where we might, go off-site. Well, I guess it's always off-site, but we might go to somewhere that is amenable to the board, all the board members, and maybe spend 2 days and an overnight. It has been flexible and again, we haven't done this during the pandemic, but it is a really good opportunity for board members to get to know each other and to delve into, particular project that needs that in-depth attention that year. And then I've already mentioned participating in the annual conference. NEMA board members are asked to maintain an individual membership, if applicable, to encourage your organization, your institution to maintain an institutional membership, and each year to make a financial commitment that's appropriate to your circumstances. The annual conference is a really big deal for NEMA, and there's a lot of work that the staff put into making it happen. And board members are asked to assist in a variety of ways, including proposing and running sessions in multiple ways and programs. In the journal, you're asked to share your expertise with the NEMA community, asked to enlist your organization in NEMA's efforts, partner with the staff on fundraising goals and development efforts, again, participate in state or national advocacy levels efforts. And you can see this is where the ad hoc committees are coming into play. And then as we actually have been doing for the past couple of years, really sort of adding to our diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusion, and justice learning and work. It's an ongoing process for all of us. And we only aim to build on it and do better as we move forward. So an application for the NEMA board will be available in early May. The application includes a few short answer questions. We ask for your resume and we ask for 3 professional references. This year, there are, a few, all candidates are definitely welcome. All applicants are welcome, but there are a few criteria we're looking for this year. We're especially interested in folks from Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Hampshire. We're especially interested in folks who are early or mid-career professionals. Definitely interested in folks who have shown leadership and participation in NEMA PAGs. And we're also looking for folks who can can support us in our DEAIJ work, folks who have that work and experience, are knowledgeable about environmental sustainability, and or have an HR skill set. So that's sort of broad, and again, all applicants are welcome, but that's a little bit of direction, I guess, in this year's applicant pool. Stop share. Good. All right, so we've given a bit of information there. Does anyone have any questions at this point for any of the board members or staff? Meg, at this point, do you want to share a little bit about paths? I mean, we've heard about some paths that people have taken, our own board members have taken to the board, but do you want to share some of the opportunities people have for gaining leadership in NEMA?
Sure, absolutely. So if at this point you feel like you do want to get more involved with NEMA, but board service might not be where you're aiming for at present, there are a lot of other ways to get involved. Amanda mentioned several of them. Obviously, getting involved with conference or workshops is a great way to get involved with NEMA and demonstrate your leadership in the field. You can write for our journal, New England Museums Now. We are putting finishing touches on the next issue that's coming out, but then we've got another one open call for this summer. So I can drop that information in the chat. We also are looking for some PAG chairs. We've got a couple of folks who just joined as PAG chairs this week. So if that's a thing you're interested in, you would be in good company with a bunch of new and exciting PAG chairs to get to work with. So being a PAG chair includes a set of responsibilities that are a little bit more flexible than being a board member, in that we ask for essentially 3 major things. We ask that you help your PAG have some kind of presence at conference. So you may be familiar with the PAG breakfasts or lunches or other varieties of things. Some of the PAGs like to organize offsite events, for instance. We also ask that PAG chairs help us come up with some of our programming at some other point in the year. Traditionally, pre-COVID, that looked like a half or full day in-person workshop. Since COVID, it has taken a lot of other forms, including ongoing like networking afternoon tea kinds of get-togethers. Some folks do Facebook page discussions. Some folks have still been planning online workshops. Some folks have been trying to do some in-person things, which are slowly coming back to life, which is exciting to see. And then the other thing is that we ask that you be willing to put your name and contact information on our website to be a resource to your colleagues, because occasionally questions come into the NEMA office where we say, we don't have the expertise to answer that, but we know somebody who, if they don't have the answer for you, can point you to some other places where you might find it. And that's the role of the PAG chairs. Some PAG chairs who were in the role for 20 years got emails on a nearly weekly basis. Other PAG chairs only get 2 or 3 a year. So depends a little on what your focus is. But those are the major expectations for PAG chairs, and we support you by helping out with all of the logistics for that, and also having an annual planning meeting where you get to brainstorm across all of the different PAGs to think about what are the themes that are happening in the museum world, what kinds of things do your colleagues want or need more information about, et cetera, in order to help us plan our programming for the year. And then there's also the opportunity to be somewhat board adjacent. For instance, the advocacy committee is actively looking for some folks who are not currently serving on the board or a member of the staff to be part of the advocacy committee to help us plan our upcoming initiatives and events and things like that, and help us keep an ear to the ground, since as one person, it is very hard for me to keep up with what's going on in the state legislatures of 6 states. So I'm always happy to hear from folks who are interested in that kind of thing, who might know a lot more about what's going on in Vermont or New Hampshire or Rhode Island or whatever than I do myself. Because my husband might work in Rhode Island, but he lives in a hospital and pays no attention to anything else. So he's not helpful when it comes to the news coming out of Providence. What does PAG stand for? Yes, thank you. Professional Affinity Gatherings. And that is basically an informal collection of people who are all interested in the same kind of things. So we have a historic sites PAG for folks who work at historic sites, and it covers a broad range of topics that have to do with running or working in a historic site. There's a PAG for educators, there's a PAG for children's museums. We have 2 fresh and enthusiastic new PAG chairs for library and archives that literally signed on yesterday. So we're very excited to welcome them. And usually the affinity gatherings are either by museum type, museum role, or some form of identity, like young and emerging professionals, independent museum professionals, or the LGBTQ+ PAG. So lots of options. And if you feel like there's a hole in the PAG offerings where you say, gee, there really isn't anything that relates to XYZ about who I am in the museum field, and I think there are others like me who would like to get a chance to talk about this, then you can reach out to me, and it is very, very easy to start a new PAG. So please feel free to reach out to me. I will drop my email in the chat, or I'm happy to answer any questions here. It looks like there are some other questions coming in through the chat though, so I'm going to hand it back to Brindha.
Thanks so much, Meg. That was great. Yes, so we have some questions in the chat. One is from Andrew, who asks if you need to live in New England to be on the board. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to weigh in on this. There are definitely folks here who know our bylaws far more tightly than I do, but I believe we need all of our board members to represent a New England state in order to be on the board. But please correct me, anyone, if I'm wrong with that. All right.
Well, let me just field that one. In the bylaws, as far as I know, it's an interesting question, Andrew, and you're the person that lives in Alaska currently and looking to move back to New England. I do not believe we actually have a residency requirement per se. I do know that we need to have at least one board member on our board representing each of the states, right? So, you know, of the board cohort, we need to have all 6 states represented. And you raise an interesting question about our virtual reach now, because we do have members around the United States, which is kind of interesting. However, we're not looking to take over, you know, the Western Museums Association or whatever. But I do understand your particular thoughts about moving back to New England and the like. So I think it's technically it's an open question, and we'd certainly love to see your application if you are in fact interested, but understanding that you're sort of competing, as it were, with folks that are actually ensconced here in New England. Does that ring true for everybody else, the bylaws experts? Okay.
Lorén, did you want to contribute something?
I sort of did. I was thinking that
Yeah.
sometimes we have people who live in a neighboring state but work in a New England museum. So I thought that that applied.
Yes,
It's where
that's
you
correct.
work. If you live in a different state, like if you lived in New York but worked in Connecticut, you could be on the board.
Right. All right, someone has, oh, sorry, Emily. Emily has asked for how priorities are set in a typical board meeting, what metrics are used to determine success. And this one I'm going to turn over to Sue and Dan, who lead our board meetings and set our agendas.
So, excuse me, I'll just weigh in for a minute. Dan and I, at the very least, usually have a conversation before the meeting. Often the committees are reporting. So a committee chair will report on what the committee has done. Conference often plays a role. And then if we are engaged in an effort like the DEAIJ effort that we've been working on for the last year, that will come onto the agenda as well. And board members can also suggest an item for the agenda that's not something that, you know, maybe Dan or I would think of. Dan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I'll pick up on this. We operate with a consent agenda, so we try to keep reporting from the staff anyway to a minimum. We don't do sort of a here's where we are. We do a staff report prior to each meeting, and we've got a consent agenda for minutes and the like that we pass at the beginning. So we really do try to focus the meetings actually on strategic issues and, you know, making basically the most efficient use of our time as a board and staff to really get into the issues that are affecting us at this particular moment in time. I don't know. I mean, sometimes that's an aspiration as a the efficiency part as opposed to reality. But I think that everybody would agree that we really do, you know, pack as much into those meetings as we possibly can out of respect for your time and your service as well.
All right, thank you. So Mark has a question. He works in a virtual, his museum is virtual and works in local communities around Massachusetts, I'm assuming, Mark, because you're in Dennis, Massachusetts. So your question is, do you fit? Do you qualify in terms of having not having a physical space? And you do. So we do not define a museum as a brick and mortar space, and NEMA serves all types of adjacent museums or organizations related to independent folks. And we have hopefully a very nice, broad, welcoming umbrella. So that isn't necessarily an issue for us, I believe. All right, we've answered Tammy's question about what a PAG is, and thank you for calling us out for using the term and not defining it. All right, Gwendolyn is interested in knowing more about the executive committee, the government and ethics committee, nominating and audit and finance. Sue, do you want to start with talking about the executive committee?
Sure. So the executive committee is made up of the officers of the board. So you would always have president, secretary, and treasurer, and then we often have more than one vice president. And the purpose of the executive committee is to be able to meet in between board meetings, particularly if there's an issue that comes up all of a sudden that needs to be addressed. But then the executive committee would then report to the board, the full board, about what the discussion was and if any decisions need to be made. So it's not heavy lifting. We're not meeting every week or anything. But I, as someone who has my own board, it's important to have a smaller group that can, if necessary, move really nimbly if there's an issue.
Okay, and then for governance and ethics, I'm on that committee, but Pat, you've been a longtime member of the committee. Would you like to talk about what we do?
Yeah, it's the responsibility of this committee to look at how operations are going in NEMA and on the board. And we work closely with membership and other committees and help give guidance to those committees about how we see the ship might steer in a slightly different direction in the coming year. And this seems to work pretty well. And maybe Brenda, I might just, since I'm a treasurer, the other question was about audit and finance. So as an example, for each fiscal year, which starts the 1st of July, in the couple of months before that, we put together an operating budget for the upcoming year. And this starts with the staff putting together a draft budget, and that is then reviewed and looked at closely by the committee. And if we come to agreement on what the budget should be, then we take it to the board as a whole. And then during that fiscal year, each month, Heather, who does a terrific job keeping the books, and Dan looking over her shoulder, she puts together a monthly profit and loss statement, which is a summary of where our income is coming from, where the expenses are going, and comparing this month with the same month last year, and comparing the year to date with the year to date the previous year. That gives us a good milestones to look at to see how we're doing during the fiscal year. And of course, this has been a real challenge during the pandemic, but we've come through actually with very good standing in our finances. So that's a little bit on those two.
Thank you, Pat. Doneeca, do you want to help me talk about the nominating committee? We too are on in this group. This is where our committee basically looks at the makeup of the board, and together with the governance and ethics committee actually think through what we have learned from board self-surveys and demographic data that we have. Think about skill sets that the board would benefit from having, representation in a variety of ways, and then also think through how to encourage folks to apply to the board, folks who might not know about the board and how to serve on the board or what it means to, and what the implications of it all is. And then we, in the past couple of years, have sort of had created a plan for the year where our committee, sort of works through the various stages of letting people know what we're doing and what the board is looking for, encouraging folks to apply, and then going through the applicants and the application review process. And then, sort of thinking about onboarding again with the governance and ethics committee and the executive committee, and then starting it all or continuing it all as we go. Doneeca, I'd welcome your input here.
Yes, and I know that there are a couple of other members of our committee that I don't think I've even met yet. That's how green I am. I think Chris is on our committee, and then maybe there's one or two other folks. But as Brenda said, we're very conscious of the makeup of the board, and we want to make sure that our board is, as representational as possible, reflecting the different demographics all across New England, different institutions. I know right now we're looking for folks, as Brenda mentioned earlier, maybe some folks who are newer to the field. Geographically, I think we need folks from New Hampshire and Vermont, and I think I'm maybe forgetting one other state.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, there we go. So, we're taking, sort of a tally of, who's continuing on the board, who may be cycling off in the near future, or maybe a year or two later. So it's just, keeping up and making sure that, we're, conscious of who's on the committee and who's involved, and, just staying on top of everything as we can, and finding opportunities like this to talk with folks like you, to see, what you're interested in and how you may want to be involved in the board. Again, it may not be now, but in the future too.
Thank you, Doneeca. Are there any other questions folks have?
If I could take the mic for just a couple of seconds to follow up maybe on some of the things that we're working on in the big picture at NEMA to give folks a sense of where they might be plugging in. So, following up on Doneeca's comments just now about what we're looking for, some of the things that we're actually undertaking right now as an organization might really provoke your interest in some ideas as well. And I will say this, we're in this moment of time, I think, as a museum field that we're sort of skirting this, the way life used to be and the way life will be. And I think that by that I mean, sort of the way life used to be is, as museums, we really focused on the collections and the interpretation and sort of those traditional things that museums have always done, education and the like. But as we all know, the pandemic era has really shifted gears for everyone, like it or not, so that we're much more focused on, things like obviously pandemic, public health, and all of these mechanics of staying open in this uncertain time. That's one thing that we as an organization are helping organizations navigate. That's a piece of it. Certainly the social justice piece has emerged as a much more pressing priority. And, so the comments that Lorén made about us, being involved in this sort of very serious, and Brindha, the sort of this DEAIJ moment, I want to underscore that, because we're not just doing training, we're actually committing ourselves as an organization to weaving diversity, equity, access, inclusion, and justice into our strategic planning. So we're in the process right now of coming off basically a year plus endeavor as board and staff to really investigate how we show up as an organization and how we can best help them, the field, get their hands around these issues and make some, transformative impact on power dynamics, power sharing in their own institutions and the field at large. The other piece of it that we're working on currently that's very important to us is environmental sustainability and the climate issues. As you may know, this past fall, we received an IMLS National Leadership Grant to spearhead the first ever survey of museums nationwide to understand the climate impact of museums. And that's going to really provide the groundwork then for potential policy changes, advocacy, funding, and so forth as museums are navigating that huge issue in the future. And we're doing this sort of on behalf of the field in general. And that's where we're kind of skirting as an organization. We're a regional organization, but we really do have some, impact nationally as well, just through the things that we're focused on in our region, and they ripple out. So those are sort of the big picture things that we're working on right now. And obviously that's a lot for our small staff and our small board and our small region to undertake. But I think that, in a nutshell, we have really achieved a lot of esprit de corps. I think as an organization, we're really committed to improving not just our organization and sort of the inward focus, but the outward focus of how we really serve our museum community and make a difference there in this very difficult and uncertain time. So anyway, that's a little bit of a background, and it might, help plug in a little bit where we are. There's a lot of hefty, not heavy lifting in some ways, but a lot of heavy lifting in other ways that you are, going to be asked to help out with. But it's rewarding work because it's.
I'd like to just, if I can, just add to that a little bit. I echo all of what Dan says. This is definitely a period of transition and transformation for museums. For some of them, it's a crisis. For others, it's an opportunity. But things are definitely going to be different. And NEMA is the strongest of the regional museum associations. It has grown during the pandemic, and that's why we now have these members that don't live in New England, because and I take no credit for this, this is the staff, because the staff did almost constant programming throughout the pandemic, great high quality programming with the help of members in the field, and it's just been wonderful. And so what I invite you to do is be part of the change that's coming to museums, because NEMA has an opportunity to drive some of this change. And whether it's related to sustainability, whether it's related to pay equity and other issues around employee compensation, whether it's related to diversifying the field, which is partly dependent on pay equity. And please consider becoming part of it, because this is a really important fight for the health and the future of museums, and we need a lot of people to participate in it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sue and Dan. Those are, it's great. Always great to speak about like sort of the bigger things that we're doing and the goals that we have. Tammy has a question about board applications. So yes, Tammy, we are planning to have the board application available to interested people in early May. Typically, the board application is open for about a month. So we'll close the process in early June. And then the committee will review all applicants and candidates, and will, see what works and what we can move, who we can move forward with. Candidate or sort of successful applicants need to be reviewed by the full board. So that happens in mid-summer, late September, mid-summer. We have in our bylaws certain deadlines that we have to meet in order for the clerk to get, sort of the slate to the full membership. The full membership votes at the annual conference in November. And if the slate is approved, then new members begin their terms immediately in November. Did that answer your question? Would you, do you have any other details you'd like to know? That's great. So you all have really great questions. Are there any others you'd like to ask about, or or is there a particular board member or two you'd like to sort of ask about again, their unique path to the board or experience, or the particular representation they bring?
I'd be happy to talk to people after the meeting as well. You can reach me at Historic Beverly if you have any other questions. Please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Yeah. Well, then thank you all so much for your time today. It was lovely to see new faces. I really appreciate that you're interested in the board, or at least learning about what we do and how to serve on the board. Hopefully you will reach out to any of us. Sue's put her email in, and I think the rest of us all have our contact information on the no, says Heather.
Not the emails because of the spam that we were having.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to seeing your applications if you so choose. Have a great morning. Bye-bye.